think I'll just educate everyone on the tale of two pilots. I think, we try to build one of our agents. We try to say, let's try and reason over everything all at once. And to be honest with you, it hallucinated quite a bit. We didn't really think it through. We can lose trust like remarkably easy in the AI world. One wrong answer, no one comes back.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Human First AI podcast. I'm Binny, the founder of AI. Today, I'm excited to have with me Ravi. Ravi is a corporate vice president at Microsoft. Ravi is the leader of an internal team called Ideas at Microsoft that basically built the entire data infrastructure for all of Microsoft, where practically every Microsoft product and tool runs on top of that data and insights infrastructure. Ravi leads a 1,000-member team at Ideas that develops and maintains this data infrastructure at Microsoft. Hello, everyone. To begin with, right? Your role at Ideas, you lead a 1,000-person team. You build such a critical piece of Microsoft's data and insights infrastructure. You've been doing it for almost a decade right now. I'm curious, how has the onset of AI in the last 2 years changed your view on all possible ways these data and insights can be consumed?
Where do I start, Vinny? That's a pretty big question. But let me just give you a little background so I can, kind of lead into that question, because I think it's an important one.
Yeah.
Ideas is actually an acronym. It's Insights, Data, Engineering, Analytics, and Systems. So in many ways, that gives you an idea of what we do, which is, we span usage, engagement, retention, feedback, all the things that become critical to product building fabric, experimentation, growth, name it. We are underpinning all of that for multiple Microsoft products across Office and security. So one of the, and we are exabytes of data that we do, and it's a pretty big data estate, and just running the system itself is a pretty big task in itself, and being able to emerge as a single source of truth. I keep calling myself the United Nations of data. In many ways, we are the neutral arbiter of what the business is doing, and I think it's an important one. You asked a very important question around AI, and I'll kind of lead into it by what I tell my team and where we are when AI kind of started emerging. Data is the foundation of all things AI. So in many ways, we were in a prime spot. We are in a very consequential role for being at the forefront of that. We were in a consequential company. Microsoft was, beginning to lead in that area. And we're in the most consequential time in history. I mean, this is exciting as it gets. So we have this opportunity then to say, how are we rethinking our role? What is the role of the data platform? How does AI play into it? And I'll tell you what I thought was the biggest and most profound thing that hit me, and I wanted to make a reality, was we were in a position to democratize this data to everybody in a way that I think we never could. This was the domain of data scientists, data analysts. There were people who had to write Python. They had to do all of these things to kind of bring this data together. And so I coined this term, and I think we're still trying to make that a reality across all of Microsoft, the citizen analyst, so that every single human would be just as empowered to know the business, to understand the business, to understand their product, and understand their customers. All of which we thought was a profound way, and AI seemed to be the magic unlock. We had a lot of work to do to bring to that magic unlock, but I think that was really the most exciting part for us, is we could empower an entire, we are a big company. I mean, we're in the hundreds of thousands. Imagine if everyone felt empowered, if product leaders were empowered, product managers were basing every single decision on data. You finally got to that data-aware culture that you want to see, where every decision is made with informed data. And again, that being accurate and reliable and not latent, all the good stuff that comes with solid engineering was all part of it as well. So I think that was really, the way we started thinking about the ideas and ideas role in making and empowering an entire company.
I mean, you went from a team of 10 to 1,000 over this period building this out, right?
Yeah, and again, well, I'd love to believe that competence kept driving the team up. But I will tell you this: I think uh, once you started getting a few successes,
Hmm.
it became very easy for us to
Yeah.
keep growing in scope. And with growing in scope and headcount and all of those things that happened with growing of scope became, and I think we were also very deliberately seeking to grow. Because if you wanted
Yeah.
to emerge as a single source of truth, you needed
Hmm.
to empower scenarios that, in some sense, and we do today, spanning the earnings releases, like
Mm.
earnings calls, to
Yeah.
shipping to the customer on the other end.
Yeah.
We do it all,
Yeah.
right? And we
Right.
started discovering scenarios that I think we never even originally thought, because we were the person who had all the usage data of every single thing. We
Yeah.
naturally became the sustainability team, because
Yeah.
in some sense this usage
Hmm.
was a proxy for how you are using it in the data center, and that became the underpinning for how you thought about your carbon emissions, and
Yeah.
customers needed to know that. So I think
Hmm.
as and when we started building this asset, it just
Yeah.
became scenarios just kept emerging, and
Amazing.
that really was the way we grew more than anything
Yeah.
else.
Okay. So, from the limited experience we have had with the single source of truth platforms, Ravi, one of the critical components of that, truth is equal to trust. I mean, the most critical component is how do I trust what I'm seeing? Like, can you think of some explicit enablements or interventions you did to kind of just embed trust into the user experience, into the platform?
Yeah, and the trust was everything. I think
Hmm.
one of the first principles that we had:
Hmm.
I'd rather be late or not have it
Hmm.
rather than be wrong.
Hmm.
Because it erodes trust instantly. You get one thing wrong, that's it. That's the game.
Yeah.
You lose it right off the get-go.
Hmm.
One of the things that we did do, and again, we started small. I think we said, look, we're going to focus on just a couple of core metrics. We will get them right,
Hmm.
that the company was counting on. We sought executive buy-in. So in some sense, and in fact, our team was kind of formed that way, because when the
Hmm.
question was asked, what's the bread and butter of common questions like Dao and Mao, when you get
Hmm.
12 answers and every one of them is different, you
Right.
begin to why a single source of truth became an important imperative for the company. You can't run a business like that, and you definitely
Yeah.
cannot. So then
Yeah.
we started just a couple of metrics. We ran the metrics rhythms ourselves. We said,
Hmm.
look, if you were not, because there's one thing, and this is the other thing that I said. I was an engineering leader. I always was, and I always will be. But in
Hmm.
some sense, I had to learn new muscle, because in some sense now
Hmm.
we were at the forefront of the business, because in some sense
Hmm.
this data was not just a data engineering problem. Like you said, it's a
Hmm.
trust problem. It's a trust
Hmm.
problem where you have to be embedded within the business. So we
Hmm.
not only said I would be an engineering leader,
Hmm.
I have an inside view to finance and all of that, all of which would rely on this stuff. So,
Yeah.
in some sense, I think it was growth for me as well. I moved from being an
Yeah.
engineering leader to a much uh, more of a well-rounded leader in terms of
Yeah.
marketing, finance, and how it was consumed. And in some sense, and this is the part that really I think was a flip for me: engineering pace doesn't equal business pace. Business was
Mm.
moving really fast. And so in
Hmm.
some sense, we had to pivot where the business pivoted.
Hmm.
And in some
Hmm.
sense, I was not being judged on how well the platform did, the five nines and all the good engineering metrics. I was judged on
Hmm.
how well the business could pivot or how well the business understood. And that was a real change. And so with that came trust, that came, all of that. And believe me, we are obsessed about quality of data above and beyond every single thing.
Makes sense.
It didn't happen overnight, but we earned trust gradually. And I think that's just
Mm.
the way.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. And somehow, in the midst of all this, you found time to write a book, RAG Ready Patterns for Data Teams, right? I'm curious, like, what motivated you to write that book? Clearly, you had a ton of learnings building out Microsoft's data insights platform, and I'm sure there was that. But what was the main motivation?
Yeah, no, I think in many ways, we wanted to write, and my fellow architect and colleagues are part of this book as well. We wanted to write a lived experience book,
Mm,
grounded in building something at a Microsoft scale that we
mhm,
thought many companies would find it useful. Because I think,
mhm,
in the RAG, we call it RAG ready data platform, and patterns that we identified and we saw, but it was more than just the code. In many ways, it
mm,
was also culture, it was people. So code, culture, and people became a theme. And I've always
mm,
thought of ideas that way as well, is that, you can't create an organization, or you can't build a platform purely based on
mhm,
code alone. You had to
mhm,
make sure you understood the culture, you had to understand the people. And so we thought we had a lot of lived experience insights that we thought would benefit the larger community. And we saw that, like, every time when we build on Azure and we build on Fabric, all of those capabilities that exist in Microsoft, but every time we would go and we would be asked to talk to customers, and we were like, okay, we're an internal team. Why are we talking to customers? Because every single time a customer was told about Fabric or told about Azure technologies, they wanted to know how Microsoft built it. So we started going and explaining our lived experiences, and we saw a bunch of enterprises struggling with the same things that we struggled. So then
mhm,
we thought, let's do a scaled version of our insights to the
mhm.
world in a way that could be consumed. And then we started distilling these patterns, and that was the motivation behind the book. Uh, and again, the book isn't released yet. It's kind of, in a couple of weeks we will have the preview on the O'Reilly website, and hopefully by June it's released to the world.
Okay.
But we're
Okay.
excited about it. But it's a lived
Yeah.
experience book, and I think that's the part that we don't see enough of. I feel like there's a lot of talking heads, there's a lot of principles, there's a lot of details, and wonderful books, all of them. But
Yeah.
we thought the unique version of the truth of the story that we could tell, I think, was the lived experience, and how
Mhm.
we did it for a company of Microsoft size,
Yeah.
and how we see it. And so, and
Totally.
it does span core culture and people in many ways. Yeah.
Mhm. And when you say RAG ready patterns, Ravi, could you maybe unpack that a little bit for us? When you say patterns, could you give us some examples of how should we think about what these patterns are?
I think patterns, implies a certain sort of things, but we thought this was more like best practices, really,
Mm, mm,
and things that more than patterns. But I'll give you an example. So
mhm,
one of the things, and this is a lived experience as well, we had built ideas, like you said, over the last 7, 8 years. We were designing for a different era. We were
mm,
designing for business intelligence to a large degree. We were designing for some dashboards. We were designing for showing customers how their usages were, and sustainability. We had M365 sustainability. So all of them were consumed in a very UX centric dashboards, or even APIs. Ideas had a bunch of APIs that we published that other systems would consume, but that was
yeah.
built for a different era. And so, in many ways, the logic, the business logic, whether these are embedded within the BI or in the dashboards, or somewhere it was floating in code, it was floating in Python scripts, all of that. It was somewhat of a big jumble. But then the one thing that we realized as soon as RAG comes to be is that in many ways, RAG needed meaning, and all
Mm,
that meaning was embedded through all parts of the ecosystem in the previous world. So we were
mhm,
moving now from a BI to where AI is the consumer of that data. We found that the meaning was woefully absent from these things, and
mhm.
hard to do. So one of the first
Yeah.
principles, the first pattern that I'll kick off to you is that the semantics begin at the source. So if I
Mm,
had to, so then, because now I think a lot of people are trying to retrofit semantic layers on top of their data, over the top of everything, and in some sense that's too late. So we're
mhm,
saying semantics begins at the source. So
mhm.
in some sense, and then we started showing, and we have examples of how we did some of that and made sure that all that meaning. Now, I'll give you another, like a quick example. Like if you look at a user ID, it's something that was
Mhm.
scattered throughout our, whether it's in billing, whether it's in identity, whether it's in uh, some SAP system, whatever you talk, there's a user ID. Now, you throw RAG at this, it will not know what to interpret as when you ask a question, tell me about the usage of blah, 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 because,
Yeah.
and it's scattered throughout. And in some sense, you want to do more than just, ask the usage. You want to say, what is the revenue that you built for this quarter and what was it? I mean, it's just that type of meaning was simply missing throughout the data because it was constructed for a different thing, and that all that logic was embedded, in script, code, whatever, and it showed up on the UX, and the human could interpret. But the AI cannot. So we say semantics has to begin at the source. And so now a data asset may have a lineage a mile long, but the semantics, when you start at source and every single attribute or field or whatever else you have, it begins at the source. So we kind of come and then I'll throw another pattern at you. In some sense, we also say trust and quality have to be a part of the metadata. It has to be a part of that asset, that data asset. Because, the worst outcome, and we talked about this earlier, we can lose trust like remarkably easy in the AI world. One wrong answer, no one comes back. If it hallucinates, so we allow that to happen. It's simply, or if it shows stale data. So in some sense, we say quality, freshness signals, all of that has to be a part of the asset. And has to have all of that. And so in some sense, then when RAG reasons over this stuff, you can say, give me the freshest version of what truth you have uncovered. So you're never, ever in a position of showing something that is wrong or late or delayed, because frankly, delayed is wrong, really, right? So the quality is perceived. And then, the other part of this equation is who should get it? Who should see this? We see this all the time where things are leaking. You're showing stuff in AI that you never intended to. In the BI world, that was easy. You never even displayed it on the UX. Boom, no one knows, right? But in some sense, in this country, you're always positive. Now, that you can avoid if you understand which scenarios can consume this data and who has access to it. So there are models like RBAC, which is very role-based and you can access control, but we almost conceived what we call SBAC, scenario-based access control, which means that the scenarios, what usage, the purpose of what you are trying to consume this data for is entitled to this data. And that's also part of the metadata. So these are the types of patterns that we continue to talk, and and a big part of that is to make sure you can enforce all of this stuff as well, right? Like, because you know what, if you do it once and you manually do it. And so we built infrastructure to make sure that every single data asset had all of this at the get-go. Lineage was a core thing. Contracts were a big part of it. All of that. And so, and rethinking that entire data platform with this frame was very important for us to make sure it was AI ready. So anyway, that's the preview of the book. There's a lot more. There's examples, how we encode that in YAML and JSON, and it had to be a code artifact as opposed to it can be scattered in documents and that kind of stuff that sometimes people think are good short-term measures to kind of fix. That's what's happening in semantic layers now. Is some person puts an ontology in a spreadsheet and someone's updating it, and that's just not going to cut it.
See, I mean, traditionally we were all familiar with the concept of a data catalog, which was kind of where the metadata kind of resided. How is that changing in this new world? Is that still relevant, or?
I mean, I think it is relevant to the point of how, if people want to consume that data, they still need to know and understand what it's meant for, what it's consumed for, and all of those are key. But I think, but that's more of a data engineer construct more than it is, an individual on the ground. I mean, I think, data catalog is a core part of it. And of course, our metadata, we're also using AI to generate some of this metadata. So I think all of those things become part of it. But anything that is dependent on a human eye is a very different way of thinking of it versus machine consumable. I think we're the more AI, and that's the spectrum, right? Like what is meant for human consumption, what is meant for AI consumption are not exactly the same. Data catalog as an artifact still is obviously necessary and key, but I think it goes beyond that when machines are consuming it. It becomes part of the core infrastructure, really, for AI. Ontologies and all of that become core part of the infrastructure for AI reasoning.
I really like this framing that you did of BI to AI. Earlier, it was really everybody's looking at BI dashboards.
Yeah,
Now it's English language queries through AI right now.
exactly. And all
Yeah.
that meaning was
Hmm.
somehow in the human consuming it, right?
Hmm.
Like they made some interpretations. They would click this button, they would say this, you wanted to
Yeah.
know which segment. All of those were somehow that was in the human. AI
Yeah.
simply cannot
Yeah.
understand that if it doesn't have the richness of the metadata and the meaning and the semantic meaning associated with it. And again, I think people are trying to retrofit it, but I think when we say
Hmm.
semantics source, and then metadata must compile, so it is an artifact of coding. In fact, and again, I think there was another term I like to talk about is metadata first pipelines.
Hmm.
So if you think about it from that vantage point, the contract about the data asset is created well before you write a single line of code to try and build that data asset. That pipeline then becomes the enforcer. Your
Hmm.
pipeline then enforces this contract that you've created, saying, look, metadata is missing. There's a lint check. You will not be able to, that pipeline cannot be functional till all of these things are met, right?
Hmm.
And again, we have our system. We built this thing on ADF called Nitro, which ensures that the pipeline creation becomes a lot more easier, but it's built on these contracts, embedded and having available. And
Hmm.
then it becomes all about coding. And once you code, you can't violate this contract. You have to make sure it meets it. And so in some
Right.
sense, it becomes a part of the system as opposed to letting, because I mean, again, you know data and you've done this for a long time. There's a lot of phantom pipelines floating around that do many things that
Hmm.
decay, atrophy, and all of that. This is how you control and build an exabyte level data system that doesn't
Right.
deviate
Right.
from the principles that you want set. And then
Hmm.
it would automatically be AI ready at the get-go. AI
Hmm.
readiness then therefore never becomes an afterthought.
Hmm.
There is simply no pipeline that is not AI ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simply not.
That, yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, which is especially when you're building something that is standardized like this. The biggest problem with metadata and generation is that in many cases, you will have large chunks of data with some metadata on it, without metadata on it. So your whole concept of embedding it in the workflow using things like Nitro is super
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
It is super powerful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I think that's the only way we could do this. A modern data platform, just simply you cannot run it in any other way at this point.
Mhm.
It should be.
Mhm. Got it. So when we spoke earlier, Ravi, you spoke about the whole concept of a tale of two pilots.
Mm.
We hear of the hype around AI. We also hear of the all the about the POCs failing and the MIT report and whatnot. So from your experience, what are some common filters that you have seen that make AI use cases succeed and the one versus the ones that don't?
Yeah. That's a good question, and I think I'll just educate everyone on the tale of two pilots. I think we try to build two one of our agents. We try to say let's try and reason over everything all at once,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it to be honest with you, it hallucinated quite a bit. We didn't really think it through. It didn't have some of the patterns that we had, and in some sense, that pilot was doomed to fail because we tried to do too much all at once. Because we
Hmm.
thought let's just unleash a Gen AI on this, and then we just started getting wrong answers. So that was one of it. But when we started focusing on one outcome, and that's one of the and again when you said why things succeed and why they don't, I think many of them are built with saying, let's bring AI to this problem, as opposed to
Hmm.
thinking of the outcome that you want to drive. So the second pilot that we built, we call it the Know Your Customer agent. This was specifically focused on only the customer data in a way that we said we will empower everyone to be able to see a customer 360 view of everything related to a customer and have that. So in some sense, by doing that, and there's another pattern that I didn't kind of hit on, but a business should understand the outcomes they're trying to drive and in some
Hmm.
sense understand their entities, their entity kernel. We call it what are the basic set of entities that you think you would want to reason over. So we thought user, device, license, subscription were kind of our core entities. And I'm just There were more, but I'm just trying to give you a sense of what we thought were the core entities. Now, business
Hmm.
should obsess about what their outcome is. So many of the AI pilots, I think, are not outcome driven. They seem to be
Hmm.
more like, let's add AI to an existing workflow, which in
Hmm.
many you might want to even question whether workflow should still even exist the way you had designed it.
Yeah.
And I think we're not doing enough thinking there. So something that is outcome driven. And I think the other part, and again, now that I'm talking about it not just from code alone, but in terms of the cultural parts of this, there is so much of a dramatic unlearning that we have to do. We were
Hmm.
so used to the BI era and how we conceived of things that we had to rethink and in some sense unlearn. We had done so many years of this phase with BI, and I think the same will apply to the software development lifecycle, and we'll probably talk about that too. But there's a lot of unlearning and relearning that we had to do. We had to undo some of the
Hmm.
habits that we had built in the previous era that we had to kind of undo. So that again is another pattern, I think, and again, I think we talked really about the data foundation pieces, the entity kernel, semantics at source, the trust and quality of freshness signal. All of these became part of it. But I'll give you another one, Vinny, that I think, in many ways, I wish more people would start thinking. And it's a very loosey-goosey one, but I'll still tell you anyway. It's
Hmm.
expectations management.
Hmm.
You have people at the top, saying, "Oh my God, we're doing so much with AI," and they're setting the expectation. It is the people on the ground who are building it are struggling to understand how to interpret some of this stuff. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, we're adding AI to everything, or we're AI forward, or whatever these things mean. Being able to interpret what that means at the ground requires leaders to start stepping up in a different way, how they
Yeah.
manage the expectations of what this can and cannot do in a way that is scaled, repeatable, trustworthy. It's different. It takes some effort, and you know
Yeah.
what? And this is what I think why we have all of these POCs that are great party tricks,
Hmm.
but never seem to scale beyond it. And so this, in some sense, we got to move from just the hype, but to the ROI and how it's delivered. And that's where outcomes come when we start with re- reevaluating the workflow in a way that I think. And so all of those things are really how pilots become scaled things that I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
missing. And it
Hmm.
spans more culture and people. I wish it was as simple as just build it this way and things would happen, but it's requiring a lot more than just
Hmm.
that. So I think
Got it. So, Ravi, I mean, through your career, you've seen up and close a couple of significant technology waves. You were there in the early days. You were part of the founding team when Microsoft Exchange moved from a box to the cloud, right? You saw that happen, and you're seeing the current AI transformation happening. Is this fundamentally very different, or is it another way with a more powerful technology powering it?
yeah, that's a good question. Again, thank you for reminding me of the SaaS part of it. It's a big part of my career and something I'm really proud of. And
Hmm.
moving from boss products to that almost seems I feel like a dinosaur, but it feels quaint that we had that thing. But I think there's definitely commonality. There's definitely
Hmm.
commonality in what happened then and what happened now.
Hmm.
Um, and even there, if you think about it, like I was there at the dawn of DevOps. Even then, the developer uh, workflow and having them be on call was big. It's
Hmm.
huge. It was huge for people to have to rethink their roles like that. I think that era also created new um, disciplines like SRE started to emerge and DevOps and on-call, all of those started emerging. Um, Continuous integration, continuous deployment. These are all alien to the box product world. So there was a lot, and how monitoring became such a critical part of it. All of those things, there was quite a lot of change. And by the way, I'll just tell you a quick story. While talking about this, I think it's
Yeah, yeah, sure.
one of the things when I was, we were building Exchange Online,
Hmm.
uh, and a fishing trawler cut a cable in the middle of the Irish Sea, and our Dublin data center went down. I remember thinking to myself, I must have missed the class. on cable cutting by a fishing trawler, because your education in computer science didn't prepare me for that
That's
moment.
a definition of an edge case there, right?
Exactly. So, but
Yeah.
but but it happened, and so business continuity, disaster recovery, all of these principles also weren't part of the nomenclature or the vocabulary of a dev at the time. But now it's like considered obvious,
Yeah.
right? So we ended
Hmm.
up doing a lot more, and it was monumental in many ways as just as much as the AI, I think. So and even there, so there's a lot of commonality with, I think, the new disciplines emerging and how devs and others, thing was changing. We also had to do many things in an experimental fashion, which I think is happening here. The crawl, walk, run kind of approaches still happen. Rolling it out minimally, and all of those things are still very common to what's happening this. But I will tell you this, and I think this is much, much more profound in a way that I'm going to try to articulate as
Hmm.
best as I can. The cloud was more about, where the software was run, right? In a large way. We're talking about how software is even built, right? We're
Hmm.
going back. The layer has moved. The abstraction layer as to where we're thinking about what's changing here, how software is built and how software behaves, right? And this, I don't think, is something we had encountered as much of. It's almost we're going to
Yeah.
revisit almost everything that we know to be um, common knowledge of how we build software for this. And in many ways, that's the part I think that is exciting,
Hmm.
but at the same time, scary.
Hmm.
Yeah, and but in many ways, I think, with the software engineering discipline has gone through these shifts. This may be the most monumental one we've ever seen. Um, but it's still the golden era of another golden era of software engineering. You know what I mean? It just
Yeah.
feels like just awesomeness everywhere. It's just
Hmm.
exciting time in many ways. And if an old dinosaur like me can be excited, I think it's just exciting to be at the forefront of some of this stuff. It's just unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just an amazing time we're all living through
Yeah.
right now. Uh, what do you think is going to happen to the software engineer's role? I mean, traditionally, we had a product manager, we had a designer, we had a software developer. What's going to happen to these roles, both practically and kind of culturally across teams?
Yeah. Again, I mean, I'm speculating just like everyone else to some degree. It's a bit informed speculation, perhaps, with what I'm seeing on the ground in my own teams and what I'm seeing in the industry. Uh,
Hmm.
I think the jury is still out on exactly how everything is going to change. But
Hmm.
I would question every aspect of the software development lifecycle at this point, in many ways, right? Like design, um, spec review, coding, code review, all of these things in many ways I feel like is gone. Like I just don't see why we would even have it. So in some sense, I think the what gets left on the software development lifecycle, and the more I think about it, and I'll this is maybe exciting for many software engineers as well. Maybe it's the end of on call as well, right? Like I think, but with that being said, I think what will have to change is how we test. I think there's evals and all of that needs to happen. We need to develop our muscle on that, because the system is no longer largely it's more with models and prompt output and all that. It'll change, so it's more
Hmm.
probabilistic than deterministic. So I think we have to get better at
Hmm.
how we evaluate the systems and how we evaluate stuff, and even monitoring and observability. And this hit me when after we talked a little bit, and I talked a little bit with you about monitoring and observability, but that was also built for a different era where humans were looking at it. Where observability, we wrote logs and we did it for a human or an on-call engineer to look at it and said, "Oh, these 5 things happened. Now that let me go and debug what happened." In some sense, the monitoring and observability has to be written for a human, for a machine to consume
Hmm.
in a way that I don't think. current observability and monitoring. So in some sense, the whole life cycle has to change, has to change. And you alluded to this, and I just want to make sure I hit this because I like talking about everything in terms of code, culture, and people.
Yeah.
And I kind of hit on the code part of this equation. This will require everyone to transform in ways I just don't know if we're all ready for, like leaders, like me, people like me. I don't still know exactly how to cost projects. How many people do I need? Because I've historically always thought, every quarter, this is what it takes. These are the number of people. There's this body of work. I know how to decompose these tasks. All of that has to be thought through differently as to what you will, do. And in some sense, we have to revisit all of that. And as a leader, and I'm conceding, I need to get better at this. And my engineers on the ground have to be a little different in the way they think about it. Right now, everyone is trying and experimenting, and I think you're seeing a lot of individuals, feeling more productive. But to achieve this at scale, I still think there's more work for all of us to do, especially on large teams. I think, if you have like 3 or 4 people just kind of doing it, it's just naturally, culturally getting better. But when you're in large organizations, and especially software factories like us, which have a lot, there's so much legacy of ways of doing this, and it all has to come
Yeah.
to those systems, and so it's a bit more transformational, but it's exciting, man. I mean, the amount of stuff you can do now. I mean, Claude Code broke open what it means to build things, and it's just
Right.
been phenomenal. Right? So
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, but I
No,
kind
you
of.
did. You did. You did.
Yeah.
Very, very insightful. And you kind of alluded to the fact that you need to start working with folks who are AI native or AI first. What does that mean to you? Let's say, for example, you're trying to hire somebody. How do you gauge if that person is AI native?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this one again is. I think I also try to use the word AI fluency, and in
Mm,
the way I think about how people are, and AI native, of course. Now, AI native in many ways to me means that you are unburdened by legacy. You have
mm,
never encountered the software development life cycle, so you know no other pattern. So you're going to go straight to Claude Code and start churning stuff out. You're an AI native. You literally don't have a single bad habit to undo.
mm,
Now, people who are more AI fluent, I mean, you probably have unlearned some things, and then now you're being fluent. And I'll tell you what that means to me. And it's going to be interesting because I would love to see it in interviews and all of that. And it's simply, maybe it's happening and I'm just not aware, but it should be happening more. But AI fluency to me means and looks like you can draw the distinction relatively easy as to what you, the human, does
mm,
and what you would delegate to the machine or the code.
mhm.
You're in that, you understand how to decompose a project into, this is my role, this is how I would do my part of this thing, and the rest I pass to this. Now, that's easier said than done. I mean, a person will have to talk about how they establish context, they focus on the architecture, the design, what to build. That's what I would expect. And then they would say, look, all the other stuff is just, I'll pass it to this. This goes way beyond the interviews where we're like, oh, reverse a linked list, or, tell me about this data structure, or, that's all you telling me I know computer science.
Mhm.
That's, but this question about this means something else, I think. Uh, and that's what I think I'm expecting. And there are maturity levels of fluency. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to say I am fluent as well at this stage, but I'm trying. But
Mhm.
there's a lot that, and in that sense, I think AI native, of course, obvious. They've been untouched, and so they're coming fresh out of school. That's, they should literally be mentored by somebody who's AI fluent right out the gate, so they don't develop any bad habits as they walk into a team, and then they run. Right. And I'm seeing that actually. Sometimes when we hire new people or some people who are just running, they are so productive. It's remarkable, right?
Yeah. And how does that work inside a large org like Microsoft, Ravi? Given that you have these fresh out of college AI fluent folks, who are kind of running from day one, but their code and methods of working clash with your existing like how do you sort things like that out? How do large companies think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the clashes will occur, but I think
Hmm.
at this point, I'd like everyone is an AI believer and everyone is an
Mm.
AI. I mean, we do have resistors. I'll be honest with you. There are some resistors, and
Yeah.
maybe resistor is a harsher word. Perhaps it's more they're skeptical, and I think they're
Mm.
anyone you talk to, we're either heading towards utopia or we're heading towards outrageous joblessness, or we're it's
Yeah.
so in some sense there's opinions on everything. God, no one knows what where we're headed to, right? So there are skeptics, and I think that some of the skeptics are some of the developers who are probably saying things like if Claude or any or GitHub or whatever does this, then what about
Hmm.
me? It's doing what I used to do. There's a camp of
Right.
resistance there in those types of people, and that's human, right?
Yeah.
You're
Interesting.
going to be resistant because you're in that bucket where you're seeing it do stuff you used to do, and so you're going
Yeah.
to obviously have some level of human resistance, which is understandable. So
Hmm.
that's one camp, I think. The other camp is the guys who or people who kind of say, "Look, I'm special. I got this great project that Claude will never understand. I'm this special snowflake, and I tried it once and it failed, which it
Hmm.
probably could have, right? There are
Hmm.
some parts where it's not good, it fails, and so these people never go back. It's also the trust thing. They're like, I can't trust this anymore. I'm just not going to go
Yeah.
back to it. So there's
Hmm.
that piece. The technology is
Hmm.
moving so rapidly. We should keep bringing them back into this, right?
Hmm.
And then again, maybe there's another set of people who are just putting their head in the sand and just saying, look, this will pass. It's a hype cycle. It's really never
Yeah.
going to change my thing. I mean, again, a very human thing. So now, when you bring in someone new, these new people, again, if they're properly guided and mentored in a way, and if they walk in already having built things, and believe me, they are people walking in having built things already, they are going to question the status quo, and they
Hmm.
have been, and they're moving fast, and and this is all positive stuff. And by the way, it is a transformation. It's going to take some effort to get
Yeah.
everyone on board. And so, and by the way, we had the same transformation in SaaS. It's not like everyone like picked it on day one and said,
Right.
they will, so it will take time, but I think
Hmm.
it's moving much more fast. If leaders
Hmm.
and managers and others start embracing it and say, look, I'd love to be able to say the only way we do it is this, but that's simply
Hmm.
enough.
Yeah.
Because what do you tell somebody who says it doesn't work for my thing? There's probably some truth to it too, right?
Hmm.
you know
Yeah.
so and again, the tools are getting better, the thing is getting better, everything is getting
Yeah.
better, and
Yeah.
so I
Hmm.
think we have to skate to where the puck is going, to use a
Right.
hockey analogy, and in some sense we just have to have leaders who continue to push the envelope that it has to
Yeah.
keep happening. Yeah. So
Got it. And in terms of your point, just point about tools are getting better, right? Maybe because we were all just shocked and awestruck by the ChatGPT launch, right? That was just such a wow moment. We expect so much more from every new model release. Do you think a lot of us are disillusioned because we have been so wowed before about progressions? Or how do you think the models are going to kind of evolve in terms of capabilities?
yeah, I think the wow moment's a good point, and I think there is a certain element of that. But I will
Hmm.
tell you, Benny, I think there's also this sense of being overwhelmed. There's a lot coming
Hmm.
every day.
Yeah.
Every day, if I look away for 3 hours, I feel like I'm behind, right? So I think there is that, and people are like, okay, let everything settle down, and then I'll get to it. There's a
Right.
certain amount, and believe me, I'm feeling it myself sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I can't afford to stop looking at this stuff,
Yeah.
right? The pace is staggering,
Yeah.
uh, and then in some sense, what you learned like a month ago, maybe already like gone. Like, remember the time when MCP was everything?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just think that the rapid pace is also, the cognitive load on individuals is high, a lot
Yeah.
going on. You're trying to do your job, you're trying to learn, you're trying to unlearn. And in some sense, I have nothing but empathy for the overall discipline on
Yeah.
how things are moving. And
Right.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A
I
lot of
can
unique
relate to
stuff
that.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally relate to that being overwhelmed, which is, I've gone through, every week I'll go bookmark things to read later. And then
Yeah.
over the weekend, I'll just go delete everything
Yeah.
because I can not get to it. And there's all fresh stuff to consume the next week.
Exactly.
So I can completely understand what you mean by getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then, Ravi, I would love to speak about this book that you wrote, the Hyderabad Blues. Sorry,
Days.
Hyderabad
Hyderabad
Days.
days. Yeah.
The code we lived by before we coded. What was the one? What is the motivation? And two, what lessons that shaped you back then do you carry on today?
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks for mentioning the book. I have it right here. Here's the
Oh,
book.
awesome. Hmm.
It's still not released. It releases on March 31st.
Okay.
Available for pre-order on Amazon and all the other places where you can buy books. So I'm excited. In all honesty, and the way again, the book is all about my childhood. It ends when I'm like 18 to 20.
Hmm.
It's all about my childhood. Um, and in many ways, I don't think it's unique to me. I think it's everyone's. I mean, this is not just my story, it's yours too, is one of the lines I have in the book. It's just about all this invisible stuff that we as children experience that continues to this day. So what I have in this book, honestly, I write about simple things that occurred in my childhood, cricket games and friends I knew, vendors I knew, people I saw or learned from, even small tragedies that occurred in our lives back then. And then I end with a postscript that tells you how it's impacting me today.
Hmm.
That's the whole book. Every single chapter has a simple story with a gentle echo of a lesson that I used even till today. I believe, and one of the lines in the book that I say, this isn't the story of how I made it, it's the story of where I was made. And so whether you grew up in Hyderabad or halfway around the world, it's about memories, it's about family, it's about meaning, and it's about all of those things. And I'm hoping again that people who read it, especially from India, would get some nostalgia from it, which is I think would be. But I hope that people around the world also, relate to their own childhood in many ways. And then frankly, I also want the tech population to read it because there's an overlap of whether you're Indian tech or you're a global tech. Uh, it's created the person I am today. I'm an executive at Microsoft. I was an engineer before. I'm still an engineer, but it shaped the engineer that I became. And some of the lessons, and Vinny, this is not unique to me. Like I said, I talk about, when we grew up, um, it never ever dawned on me or anyone, frankly, of my generation to ask your parents to buy you anything. We kind of
Hmm.
pooled our money together. We had a cricket team. We all pooled like 50 cent paisa together and we bought a cricket ball
Hmm.
and we played and we just, and that was just part of it in some sense, but that was a lesson in teamwork and that was a lesson in, I wouldn't say frugality, but it was always like we made do with whatever we had. And, all
Yeah.
of those things are lessons that are still valid for me,
Hmm. Hmm.
we talk about in tech all the time, doing more with less. And, well, we did more with less back in those
Hmm.
days.
Hmm.
And so these are just gentle stories about all of that. And in many ways, I hope all proceeds are going to charity. And it's really more of a passion project for me to um, capture a life, honestly, that a time that doesn't exist anymore, even in India. Like this is 80s, 90s India. I don't think it
Hmm.
exists in current day India. Uh, and in many ways, I was just trying to capture that time frame. For me, it was very much, I actually never even set out to write a book. And it got the fact that when I wrote it and I was trying to maybe self-publish it so I can share it with my family and friends, Microsoft got interested. Microsoft is publishing
Hmm.
the book. Microsoft
Wow.
sees in it an origin story of an engineer. So that's
Mm,
how Microsoft got interested and are publishing it, and all proceeds going to charities. So,
that's
uh,
amazing. It just
so
sounds like a very meaningful book to both write and to read. I'm definitely picking up a copy, and we're going to be sure to provide the link to that as part of the podcast. We'll do that as well.
I appreciate that. I really
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Thank you.